Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Svarim Chatter podcast. On this episode of the podcast, I'm going to be joined by Rabbi Isaac Rice, who is the Associate Rabbi at Congregation Anshe Chesed in Hewlett, New York, and is the head of the Halacha Department at the SKA High School for Girls in 5 towns. And we'll be discussing his new book, Sefer, new Haggadah, titled A Night of Teaching, published by Mosaic Press. And we're talking about his book Sefer, and also about the Haggadah. Now we'll get into why this Haggadah, why we have this conversation, and why another Haggadah to the many thousands of Haggadahs. So thank you, Rabbi Rice, for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
So let's start off. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background.
I studied in YU. I got smicha from YU. I learned in YU with Rabbi Meir Twersky. And then for many years with Rabbi Shechter. And after I finished Smicha and Kollel, I jumped into Chinuch, and I ended up for the last decade or so teaching Halacha and Machshava in the SK High School for girls in Long Island. And then also at the same time, nearby as well, I serve as the associate rabbi in a shul. And that's generally what I spend most of my time doing.
Okay, so to start, I think I haven't done many episodes. I'm trying to remember if I did any about Haggadah specifically. With an author of a new Haggadah, and I think the question that has to be asked is why did you decide to write Haggadah, and why another Haggadah? It's interesting. You go into this farm store every year and you see countless Haggadahs. I put up a thread on Twitter. And this year is not so many as of when we're recording this, but last year was like 50. Every year it's like 50 Haggadahs. There's just like endless amounts of Haggadahs being churned out in English, in Hebrew. So why did you decide I'm going to write Haggadah, and why this?
Okay, so it's a good question, and I asked myself that question as well when I was sat down to write it a couple of summers ago. The answer is that I could not find something that I myself would want to use at the Seder. I tried to put something together that I couldn't find anywhere else, and I'll try to elaborate. What's the difference between what I have here and what perhaps other people are doing, and something that I myself would want to use at the Seder, not just to learn from and to put away in the Pesach Svarim shelf, for next year, and maybe never to open up again or to look for a quick idea on Pesach. But I think what I hopefully created, B'siyas Yishmaya, is something that is not duplicated anywhere else, and something that I myself, and I hope that other people as well, would want to use at their own Pesach Sedarim, for many years to come. Almost all other Haggadahs, they contain very nice divrei Torah related to Pesach, divrei machshava, hashkafa, or even halacha that relate to Pesach in general, of the Zman of leaving Mitzrayim, or in particular just the Haggadah itself. Some of them and the ideas are relevant to the Seder, and others are not. I'm not going to name names of which the Haggadahs are more or less. Some Haggadahs I think are Mechai Mason for Rabbanim who never wrote, Haggadahs as well. You'll have Haggadah from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Haggadah from the Stipler, Haggadah we had a few years ago from the Stei Chemed. What they do is they collate from what everybody has. But who's to say that Gadol would have said such an idea on that, particular idea in the Haggadah? And who's to say they would have said the same vart that they said on the Parashah, they would say the Seder itself. And many of the ideas are relevant to the themes of Pesach, and they're very beautiful. But the mitzvah of the night and the mitzvah's halayla is Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. As the Rambam says in the Gemara, this is called Hamarba Misaper. Whoever increases the telling of the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim is Harezim Meshubach. That is the mitzvah of the night. And many of the Haggadahs that are out there, they'll say a beautiful idea that relates to personal freedom, or they'll talk about Beinan L'Chaveiro, or they'll talk about different ideas, but it doesn't relate to enhancing and assisting the people at the Seder to fulfill the mitzvah itself. So what I think we have here in this Haggadah is a tool for anyone who wants to run a Seder, or even follow along with the Seder, to assist them in every single aspect of fulfilling the mitzvah of the night of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. It's a guide for anyone who wants to use the text of the Seder itself, as put together by Chazal, to use the Haggadah as a script. The Haggadah is a script. The Haggadah is a playbook put together by the Chachamim that we're meant to use in order to teach children, teach people at the Seder. And many Haggadahs are beautiful and they have beautiful ideas, but they're not that script. They're not that playbook in assisting us in how to get to that point of teaching Amunah and about Tzias Mitzrayim and all of those different things. There's a beautiful mashal that I forgot who I heard it from once, but I often use it with my students when it comes to talking about the Seder and using the Seder. And that is that the Seder is an instrument. It's a tool. And if anybody has a piano, I myself, I don't play piano, but I have a piano in my house that, my kids will play on from time to time. And okay, so I have no experience, but I think many people, when they see a piano, they know how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. It's those three keys, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, and they can play Mary Had a Little Lamb. But that doesn't mean I'm playing the piano beautifully. But you have a person who's an expert, who's a concert pianist, who knows how to play beautifully, they can make beautiful music. The Haggadah is an instrument, and this, just like the Siddur is an instrument. And the more you learn it, and the more you pay attention to it, and the more you practice on it, you can make more beautiful music. So you can have a Haggadah that plays Mary Had a Little Lamb, so to speak. It can be used in a very basic sense. You can also take the Haggadah and play something extraordinary, hopefully to inspire yourself and your family around you in order to build up the night. So I'm trying to do is to take that instrument of the Haggadah and make it more user-friendly to use the script and to use the playbook of Chazal to tell the story. So that's that's the basic overview what I'm trying to do. We try to contain, clear instructions and reasons for every single step of the Seder, so that the leader, anybody following along, can really confidently understand what they're doing and, more importantly, why they're doing it, which I don't think we always have in a lot of Haggadahs as well. And one of the main things, which I guess I'm happy to elaborate on later, is this elucidation that in this area of Magid, it's not just a translation, but it's really an elucidation where the text of the Haggadah is interspersed and woven with Chazal and Rishonim, and to link together all the different steps of the Haggadah to show the story and the progression of what everything is there. In using that, I was inspired originally by the Mesifta Haggadah. My father-in-law had given me a gift. I think maybe the first year I ran my own Seder of the Oz V'Hada or Mesifta Haggadah. And anyone who's used, not just the Gemaras, but anyone who used the Mesifta Sidurim and the Zmiros and things like that, they do a beautiful job of interweaving the actual text with the Perush so that you can read both along at the same time. So I was very inspired by that style, and I think that style is reflected as well. And I even borrowed pieces from the Mesifta Haggadah as well. I have had reached out to Rabbi Yoshua Leifer, who's the Nasi, who's the head of Oz V'Hadar, and he gave permission, gave me a bracha to use pieces in that style as well. And I think that's something that we don't find in English Haggadahs, that you have that interwoven biur within the explanation itself. All the Divrei Torah in the Haggadah focus on telling the story. There's a nice collection and a quick summary of all the major midrashim and all the major parts of Sibur Tzias Mitzrayim for the leader or the participant to choose from, which is really easy friendly. In that regard, I used two beautiful svarim, which I think many people are familiar with. One is Let My People Go from Rabbi Isaac Rice, which I think Artspo Feldheim publishes, and then Metame HaShulchan by Rav Moshe Lewis, who collects all the beautiful midrashim in story form. And we focus on Ikari Amunah. I also specifically had wide margins in the Haggadah itself. It's not, the margins are very wide, because I would hope and I would encourage that the person who uses Haggadah will write their own Divrei Torah in the side, their own notes, their own ideas that they'll hopefully use as well in the future, and they'll go back to it again. And then I will talk about later on as well, I added a special elaborated Perush on Hala Nirsa at the end, which I don't think we find in many other Haggadahs. That, I think, is a few things that set it apart.
Okay, so a couple things to unpack. First of all, you mentioned the piano. Maybe a frummer song than Mary Had a Little Lamb, yeah, just okay, so as you mentioned, there Mesifta, there's there are Haggadahs that do this in Hebrew, not many, and the Torah Shleimer brings Chazal. Maybe give a shout out, not just a well-known Haggadah, actually. My friend Shimi Shmanowitz, podcast listener, has Haggadah Ali Zayis as well. It goes through like Chazal and different things, but I don't often say a lot of things on the podcast myself, but I want to agree with what you're saying. You have a lot of likutim, and I find I was telling you this before. You have this a lot of chumash svarim al Torah. You go to someone's suda, they just say a vart, and it's a beautiful thing. I'm not belittling that in any way, but it's not oftentimes learning up the parsha with chumash, Rashi, Ramban, Farshim, whatever it is, and you have this. Here this. The mitzvah, we're going to talk more about this, is Sipri Siyas Yisrael, and it's like some nice vart, we'll get to the kids or whatever, it's from Lika, it's from this Yeshiva, this Rav, this Gadol, and it's just not, forget the, and even not the Lika, it's just like nisht, it's just not the thing, it's not what's going on, it's very, whatever. But so something about your, when you mentioned this idea to me, I had a couple other podcast episodes for Pesach, nothing on Haggadah, so that's one reason I thought it's a good idea. And as well as you have a prologue, you have an essay that you published elsewhere and that you included here. And the essay I think is very interesting. We should talk a little bit about that just at the outset of the Seder. Before we get into the actual Haggadah, just the Seder and Haggadah and the Sipri Siyas Mitzrayim itself, as you call it, returning the Seder to its glory. And you talk about a quote unquote, I'll say it in quotes, air quotes, issue that's facing, especially American Judaism. So you can talk a little bit about your essay.
Okay.
Again, I put an air quote.
Yeah, issue. Of course, and that's not to be lakant or anybody or any mechanchem, any educators or parents. And just to be clear, I'm not a master mechanech who runs perfect sedarim. My sedarim have their hiccups and their issues, and no one should think that if they come to the Rice home that you're going to see a little bit of, Yitzias Mitzrayim mamish going on. Every Seder is going to have its hiccups and its issues. I'm just trying my best, like everybody else. That essay that I published in a volume called Ali Desha, which is I edited in memory of a childhood friend of mine who passed away, collected essays on chinuch from other mechanchem. The main premise is that the schools seem to have a background. Children are sent home with thick notebooks, or the boys come back from yeshiva, the girls come back from seminary with thick notebooks of Divrei Torah. It's for the parents to hear, but that's not what the Seder is supposed to be. The pasuk says, "V'yigaz lebincha," and the mitzvah of the night is for parents to teach their children. There's 364 days a year where kids talk and parents listen, and parents are around doing what the kids want. And there's one night of the year where the mitzvah is for the parents to talk and the children to open up and the parents to make their best effort to make their words heard. And that is the model of what the Seder is supposed to be. Something happens, I don't know if it goes on in Eretz Yisrael, but something happens in America at a certain point, maybe because, American parents might not have been educated in the 50s and the 60s in day schools, yeshivas felt they had to supplement, and children were coming home with Divrei Torah and beautiful Haggadahs and all this preparation. And the parents, go to work and they go to their jobs and they prepare for Pesach and they go shopping. And it seems that many parents, expect the children to have Divrei Torah, when al pi halacha it really should be the other way around. That the parents are the ones who should have the Divrei Torah, and the interesting Divrei Torah and the messages for the children as well. There's a beautiful memoir about the Holocaust period. I forgot who publishes it. It's called "The Night Is Not Dark." It's about a Rosh Kollel. His name is Rabbi Isaac Rice, and he was very close to the Chacham Wasserman. And very, very fascinating stories about the Gedolim that he met. And he has, I think, 2 chapters. I think his daughter wrote the book, 2 chapters about Rabbi Yitzhak Bernstein's experience at Pesach at the Seder of Elchanan Wasserman. And I think anybody who's listening knows Elchanan Wasserman certainly had a certain personality, Yerushalayim, and a certain seriousness and awe about him. But when Elchanan Wasserman sat down to the Seder, he read the Haggadah and typed it into Yiddish for everyone there to understand it, interspersed with a few comments, well with enough time to eat afikolim for chatzos. And this was the Pesach Seder of Gedolim. I once heard a story, I don't remember from who, but Rabbi Yehuda Amital, who's the Rosh Yeshiva in Gush Etzion, so he would have Bachrim and people come to Seder, the great Rosh Yeshiva, the big Talmid Chacham, they're going to hear amazing Divrei Torah, and they would come expecting to sit there and soaking up all these very high-minded and very lofty ideas. And Rav Amital would tell everybody present, my children and the grandchildren, they sit next to me at the Pesach Seder. All of the Bachrim can sit, at the other end of the table, because the mitzvah of the night is to focus on the children and relate to them in their particular way. The Rambam says, the Rashbam says, meaning all the extra things that are not necessarily related to Yetzias Mitzrayim itself, you can do that during Shulchan Aruch. You can do that later on. But the mitzvah has to approach it at this particular time of that night to the children themselves. Rav Reuven Leichter, who's well-known and very famous mashgiach in Eretz Yisrael, he has written essays about this as well. I think he has his own Haggadah as well that somebody put together. I think he gives shiurim every year on the Haggadah of how to do it. And he says that everyone should be able to be engaged the entire time. You have to be engaged, no one going to the couch like for a nap, towards the middle. Everyone should be engaged in speaking to the children at all their different levels. And I think that speaks to the idea as well of that the Galat Levincha means Yetzias Mitzrayim, what happened, Midrashim Chazal, Ikari Amuna, Bitachon, all of those important themes. And again, not not Vortlach, not Gematrias. People get very hung up in the beginning about Rabbi Isaac ben Azariah and his beard and how many white hairs, and he was a Gilgal of Shmuel HaNavi, and 52 plus 18 is 70, and he has a whole thing. But it's very nice, but that's not Sibur Yetzias Mitzrayim and Gematrias and things like that. And tickets and games and things like that are purposeful if they're enhancing the story. But if they're distracting from the purpose, then all these things really take away from the mitzvah of Haggadah to Levincha.
So someone comes, he wants to run a Seder. You're saying that, sometimes the parents have to be prepared. Maybe that's why this happened. The parents aren't always prepared. But someone wants to come to the Seder. Yeah. They want to be prepared. They want to run a Seder properly, so to speak. Mm-hmm. How should they do it?
Again, I'll say again with a disclaimer, I'm not an expert to tell anybody, what they should or shouldn't do. I'll tell you what I think works for me and with other parents that I've spoken to as well. The parents should be reading, thinking, literally writing a script for the night. If you're taking out time to go to the store for 3 hours of shopping, then there has to be an hour in there somewhere to make sure that you're sitting down with a pen and a paper or sitting by a computer and planning out what you're going to do by the Seder. You also have to know the contents of the Haggadah. You can't sit down and plan the whole thing if you don't know what the Haggadah is saying. And hopefully the elucidation that we have in the Haggadah here is helpful. You have to know where to focus and where not to focus. Too often, too much time is spent on the beginning parts after Kaddish, Orchas, Karpas, Yachatz, even before getting to Magid. And Magid is left with no energy. Magid doesn't start, al pi halacha, until the drashos of the 4 psukim of Arami Ovid Avi and everyone down to Mitzrayim and all the different things. That's the Ikar Sipur. But people run through that part and they're spending time, saying, Manishtana in 5 different languages, and they're working on 8 drashos about the Arba Banim, all of that stuff, the Arba Banim and Rabbi Isaac ben Azariah and the Chachamim B'nai Brak, Yachol Mirosh Chodesh, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, all of that is Hakadama. That's all introduction to focus us, to get us ready for the mitzvah, but that's not the main thing. You have to know where to focus and where to put most of your efforts. And hopefully the elucidation in this Haggadah opens up what the Haggadah is teaching us about the story and shows us where to focus. We also try to do in the Haggadah, maybe we'll talk about later, to show what those introductory pieces are doing and how the leader of the Seder or the follower of the Seder can understand why they're being said. There is a beautiful sefer called Menucha Kedusha by Yisrael Isser of Panovich, who was a Talmud of Chaim Volozhin, and he says in his essay, and I bring this in the Haggadah, that you have to know that even if you spend all night with riddles and explanations or psukim and things like that, you didn't fulfill it. The only thing he says that matters is to speak about the miracles, the power of Hashem, Hashem's koach of the world, his love for Klal Yisrael, things that speak to what it means to be a Jew and relate to it as well. And the Chassam Sofer also writes that the telling of the story is not about pilpul and halacha and lamdis. It's about relating to the miracles of Hashem. And the goal is to instill emunah and Hashem Yetzias Mitzrayim. Nothing else really. The parent needs to sit down and think, how am I going to take ideas of emunah, ideas of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and how am I going to relate them to the different ages of my children, the different participants who are there? Nothing else really matters, beyond that. If the parents are enthusiastic, I think the kids will be enthusiastic. If a parent comes to the Seder with a geschmack and they're excited to pick out the 3 matzahs and the father's dressed in a kittel, if that's their minhag, and they're doing things that are getting everybody excited and they're building it up, it will be exciting. But if the parent comes to the table tired and they feel and they look like a shmata, so then it's gonna feel that way for the children as well. But that idea of preparation is so important. We gave this mashal about the instrument before. You got to prepare, you got to practice, you got to get in the role. You also you got to know your crowd. Am I dealing with, kids on the age of 10? Am I dealing with teenagers? Am I dealing with only adults? You have to meet everybody where they is and to plan accordingly as well. Those, I think, are things that are important for anyone who's going to sit down to take it seriously, to have in mind, when it comes to that preparation beforehand.
So let's discuss some, work through some of the Haggadah, and we'll talk about the Seder of the Haggadah, and you can talk about things from you should talk about things from your Haggadah, from the one that you published here at People Kalamar's. So in the beginning, before we get to Magid, Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, what do you have to say about that?
I think that we try to highlight, what the significance and the meaning of each thing is, so that people there understand they're doing something very important and something that's very weighty and very meaningful. I spend time in the beginning discussing the Seder plate and why is each thing at the Seder plate, that the people at the Seder should know what the egg is doing there, and what the zroa is doing there, and why there are two types of maror, and all these things to have a real explanation. Nothing in Kabbalah and nothing, that's too out there, but the simple shot explanation is what's going on there. So we try to really make that clear so that the person leading the Seder, anyone following along, can understand and appreciate the beauty and the importance of the Seder plate. We try to focus on, we'll say, for example, in the beginning, the minhag that most Klal Yisrael has to sing the 15 steps of the Seder. And we try to discuss, that's an important part. So when a person's going on a journey, they look at a map before they go on their journey, and the map is telling us what we're doing is important. And kids can relate to that. Going on a treasure hunt and going on an important trip to see where they're going. These are ideas that a young person can relate to. A lot of the introduction to Magid in the Haggadah focuses on the bris bein habesarim. Most people probably don't even realize when they're going through Haggadah that that's a major piece of the introduction. So in the comments and in the parish, I elaborate so that the person leading the Seder who doesn't know so much about it can explain what was the bris bein habesarim, what went on with Avram Avinu, why was the bris bein habesarim important, and what's its relationship to Yetzias Mitzrayim. I collected again with the help of Let My People Go from Rabbi Deitch and Rabbi Lewis's Matami Shulchan, all of the midrashim that I could find on the Eser Makos. So when we get to the Eser Makos, the person can, for a moment, relive them, talk about them, elaborate them, act them out at the Seder, make them interesting, making them exciting, and making it very interesting. I tried to make it as succinct as possible. No, I don't think anybody wants to sit there and read 7 pages on Dam and Svardeya. I tried to make them bullet points so you can go to them very quickly, and a person who's prepared beforehand can highlight some, add some more, circle them, whatever it's going to be, that these midrashim will be at your fingertips to explain and to elaborate, to bring the Eser Makos, so what happened, how the Mitzrim made the Jews suffer, and what happens to the Mitzrim as well, and Paro, and all these things. I tried to succinctly and as quickly make those midrashim available to all the people there so they can use them in their own explanations. I think that a very beautiful piece in the Haggadah is the translation of Dayenu. My oldest son had a Rebbe when he was in the second grade, I think, in Yeshiva Darchei Torah in Far Rockaway, Rabbi David Yankelovich. Rabbi Yankelovich is a very talented mechanech, very, very creative. And he sent home one year with all the Pesach stuff and Haggadahs, a rhyming translation of Dayenu that you can sing in English that fits the tune. So with Rabbi Yankelovich's permission, I used his English Dayenu as the official translation in the Haggadah. So that's also very cute for the children to hear about the stories and what happened in Mitzrayim, all of those things, as well as things that are accessible. Why do we do each step of the Seder? What is it part of? How many times in the Seder do we lift the cup and cover the matzahs, open the matzahs, put down the cup? So we explain the significance and why we're doing that. And the parent should be able to tell the child, we're doing it for this reason, either because, gullus and freedom can't exist together, and all these different things are opposites. All these ideas. Regarding that's the midrashim. In the vartlach that I bring on the bottom, so those vartlach or those divrei Torah, I would try to be extremely careful about what I put in and what I didn't put in. Every single thing I chose has to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Hashem guiding the Jewish people and caring for the Jewish people, our emunah with Hashem. I brought a beautiful mashal there from Rosh Shlomo Brevda about the importance of maskil b'genus. Why are we starting with all these terrible introductions? And at each place as well, when we talk about karpas, we go through 4 very important, relatable reasons for karpas. And we talk about yachats, we go through all the major famous reasons, not things that are out there and things that are necessarily interesting or creative, but the simple, famous reasons for all these particular steps in the Seder. By Vihisha Amda. So Rav Gedalia Silverstone was a Rav in Washington, D.C., in I think the 1940s, 1950s. So he has a beautiful sefer on the Haggadah, and he says by Vihisha Amda, it's referring to the cup that we're holding up. Vihish Amda, this cup that we're holding up, and the halachos of yayin and staying away from non-Jews that protects us from intermarriage. And what we say is this is what Vihish Amda Lavosenu, our being independent and our keeping halacha and the halachos of Chazal that protect us from intermarriage and intermingling. This is what protected us. And nevertheless, the next part of the Haggadah says, and Lavan still wanted to kill us. But we have to stick to the Torah. The more we refrain from, following Chukas Hagayim, the better we'll be protected, the better off we'll be. So all of those things, fit in particular. Every vart is curated to fit to the exact theme and the exact message of what I feel that the Haggadah is supposed to be about. I think a particularly special aspect that I mentioned before is by Divrei Torah by Hallel and mostly by Nirtza. I don't recommend saying a lot of Divrei Torah by Nirtza. I don't think at that point in the Seder it's late. People are tired, and hopefully things are exalted and invigorating, and people are excited to be and singing. I hope everything is beautiful at that point. But at that point, I think many people also are looking towards the end of the night. I would recommend saying long Divrei Torah and Haggadah and Echem Yodea. But for people who are interested and want to know more, I collected over a number of years from giving shiurim in SKA to parents, and a lot of this idea, just a side point, important point, a lot of this idea of the Haggadah came from something we did in our school, is having a night of preparing the parents. I think that every school should do this. Every school should have a night where the Rebbeim and the Moras come and they teach and they give over Divrei Torah, they give over stuff for the parents to share with their children instead of the other way around. I think it would be a beautiful thing for them to do. I think I make a note in the bottom there. I think that they should be compensated as well for taking out their time. But I think it's important that they also prepare the parents. So I have very, very beautiful stuff from Gedol Yisrael and Haggadah. I think my favorite piece is the explanation of Haggadah from the Haggadah of Yosef Zechariah Stern, who's the Rav in Shavuot. He has an amazing Haggadah, which I don't think has been reprinted. I think, Machon Yerushalayim, who's printing all of his stuff again, should definitely move on his Haggadah. His Haggadah is really, really beautiful. But his parish on Haggadah is out of this world. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Hopefully people will go and see it themselves. But it's essentially, he says that Haggadah is a Shevach L'Hodah, praise to Hashem, for after Malchus Yisrael lost the connection to Yerushalayim, he goes through that each step of Haggadah is a different melech of Malchus Yisrael and how they were killed, and eventually until it came back to the end that they were able to return and the nation was unified again, and they're able to go and bring the Korban Pesach one more time. It's a beautiful explanation. And Echad Miyodea, this is already in English, but it's a very elaborate parish, Rabbi Marcus Lehman's Haggadah, which I think has been reprinted a number of times as well in English. He has a masterful piece on Echad Miyodea, but you have to read through like 8 pages to get through it. So I summarized in a way that was more accessible to open up those ideas as well by Nirtza and really expose some of the beauty and the depth that goes into these piyutim that we often don't pay too much attention to at the end of the Seder.
So you mentioned Rabbi Isaac Stern, Techer Yosef, Machon Yerushalayim did a lot of his tshuvas. He has a sefer on Haggadah that I'm remembering right now, and other svarim. Marcus Lehman, he wasn't just an author; he was a Rav, and his Haggadah, I believe, was published by Feldheim. I think it was reissued actually recently. It was done in English a while ago, but it was just like it's available again. Now the Haggadah, as you mentioned, something interesting. I think you mentioned this before, just to emphasize. So in the beginning, when it started off, until you get into the whole story, there's a lot of, you mentioned Lozman Azaria, and going back with Haggadah, Manishtana. There's a lot of different things going on before, the Arba Bana, before you get into the entire story, working through. I think it's interesting. By that time, by that time, I don't know, people just running through it. Maybe it's like different psukim. Everyone's just like reading through it. Maybe not as much as, I don't know, people have been to various Starim. I've been to Starim, and they're like, let's just wait for Shulchan Aruch, wait to leave the Torah for then. And we gotta go, we gotta move. Everyone's hungry at that point, and it's taking time. At the beginning is where you spend time. Those are the more, famous parts of the Seder, and here's more reading various psukim. So, what do you have to say about that? How that kind of
Yeah. So the psukim are the main thing, and the person prepares properly, they'll be able to really open them up in a beautiful way. I think that this is from my Rebbeim, from Rav Shechter and my other Rebbeim as well. In our yeshiva, we're told there's no reason anyone should ever have an issue with getting to Afikomen by Chatzos. It shouldn't be an issue at all. If you want people to step, you want people to be engaged, you want to fulfill the midst of the night properly, so you kind of have to move through those earlier parts of the Haggadah. Move quickly. Again, like I said before, should every child have the chance to say Manasham if they want to? 100%. They need to say it in Russian and Japanese and Portuguese, and Yiddish and Hebrew and English? Maybe not. They can say that for later on. Those parts in the beginning, those Hakdamas, need to be moved through quickly. And then you'll be able to have time to sit with the beer, with an explanation, with a translation, and then able to elaborate on those things. So that really is the main part. That's clear from Chazal. It's clear from the Rambam that those psukim, those drashos, are really the main thing.
Now you mentioned a lot of things. If you do include the Torah, you talk about Bitachon, Emunah. I think you talk about the introduction. Now you also focus on the Yud Gimel Akar Emunah as well. Why is that that you focus on?
So that's an idea that I heard from my Rabbi Shechter, that the person's able to bring out the Yud Gimel Karim over the course of the Pesach night. I think I bring Tumar Makomos or Moshe Chagiz in his Svarim as well. They cite this is something that the person should do at the Seder. I don't think Rav Shechter invented this idea, but it's something that existed beforehand. I don't elaborate too much on them. I'm not there to give a pilpul shir on Yud Gimel Ikrim and what does Sipyus Yeshua mean and how can you dive into something that's not stopping something to a malach. That's not the point right here. But I just highlight throughout the course of the Seder. I highlight all 13 Ikrim where they come up, and if the parent chooses to elaborate and he knows his crowd, so then they'll elaborate and they'll teach them a little bit more. But also just to highlight, it's worth a parent saying at the Seder for 7 seconds. A Jew has to believe that we daven only to Hashem and nobody else. A Jew is responsible to believe that there's going to be Tchias HaMesim. Just to relate that for a moment, that the parents should say it and the children should hear it from the parents, I think is a valuable thing that can be highlighted.
So your English translation, you mentioned this, how it's not just a translation. People are familiar with Mesivta, and as you mentioned, Art Scroll does certain things like this at certain times, certain Sfarim, where it's this kind of elucidation together with, mixed with interpretations. Explain that a little more. Obviously, this is audio, not visual. So people have to see the Haggadah, but just if you could explain what you mean by that.
So if a person has seen, any art scrolls, more recent translations of Sfarim where they have, line by line, like the older Rashis or the new Sifrei Bachshava art scroll puts out now. So you have the literal translation of the text in bold, and whatever the elucidation is, the explanation of the text is in not bold. And Mesivta does this with all their Sfarim, whether it's the Gemaras or whether it's the Zmiros or whether it's the Haggadah, the Siddurim they put out, they do this as well. And doing so, I think, enables the person to smoothly and in a real flow go through text, understand it, but also understand that what I'm saying here is not necessarily the only shot or the pashup shot, but I'm saying it with the the author's interpretation as well. So we tried to model that as well. Every single sentence in the parts that need explanation, meaning Magid. I don't do this by Kiddush. I don't do it by benching. We don't do it by Halal and Mirza. Only in the places where the person reading the Haggadah, and this is, by the way, as well, a halacha, if the people of the Seder don't understand Lashon HaKodesh, the person leading the Seder is chayav to explain they have to translate. You have to translate every single word, every single line, so that they understand what's going on here. So we try to elucidate and to bring out all of these things so it won't be a burden, but will also be interesting and opening up. So I did not cite any sources at all in the Haggadah for where I'm adding from Chazal or Rishonim. Anyone who wants to email me, I'm happy to share all the Marmakomos, but I felt that would just be too much on the page and a bit of a distraction. Nothing is a secret, but things were culled from, the Torah Chaim Haggadah put out, which has all the Rishonim from Masad Rav Kook, and obviously from the Mesivta as well, using some of their biurim, and that's the general translation itself. The goal, like we said before, is also to connect the script of the Haggadah and to bring, Seder to everything, so to speak. So for example, on the line of Chol Hamarga L'Sapir B'Tzias Mitzrayim Harezim Meshuvach, right? Whoever speaks at length about what happened to B'Tzias Mitzrayim, this is praiseworthy. So I add, afterwards, I say, the Rishonim say, why is it praiseworthy? Because it gives cover to Hashem. When you elaborate what happens, it gives Kvod Shemayim, that you went on and on about what Hashem said. Now, that then is a good introduction to explain why now are we talking about Ma'aseh Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua? Why is the event of Bnei Brak coming right after that? Because we want to bring a proof. Because we just said before that even if you're a Talmud Chacham, you need to tell the story of leaving Mitzrayim. And we also said it's a good thing to spend a lot of time. So the Haggadah now brings the proof. What's the proof that even a Talmud Chacham, and what's the proof that even you're supposed to spend a long time? The best proof the Haggadah can give you is the story of Rabbi Eliezer and Yeshua and Bnei Brak, because they are Talmidei Chachamim, and they did it all night, and they elaborated all night on what they were doing at the Pesach Seder. So again, does that need a 5-minute Dvar Torah? No, because it's very pashut to the Haggadah now that we explained to you. This is just the Haggadah justifying itself and giving a proof text as to why even Talmidei Chacham have to go through the Seder, and why even it's important to spend a lot of time. Or a different example would be, before we begin the actual telling of the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, so we say, Baruch HaMachim Baruch Hu. Why? Because it's a Birchas HaTorah. We're making a Birchas HaTorah on the Sibur Yetzias Mitzrayim. We know that whenever there's a special type of Talmud Torah, the person made a Birchas HaTorah in the morning in Shul. And now they're going to get an Aliyah at Shachris. So they're going to make another Birchas HaTorah. Why? It's a different type of Talmud Torah. So a different type of Talmud Torah gets a special bracha. So we try to explain that in one line, so that the person leading the Haggadah can now tell the people there, everyone, we're now going to begin the mitzvah of Magid. We're now going to make a Birchas HaTorah, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu. So all of those things are very quickly, hopefully very smoothly interlaid within the elucidation, so that the person leading the Haggadah or the person following along is able to do it. Yachol Rosh Chodesh. Why are we talking about Yachol Rosh Chodesh? Okay, so we explained hopefully very clearly and very quickly within the Haggadah why we're talking about. I would have thought we should have done from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, but now I'm going to do it now, maybe by Erev Pesach, by the Korban Pesach, but it has to be Matzah Mar in front of you. So we'll explain why the Haggadah is having this conversation right now, what it's supposed to do. I guess some examples from in Magid itself, from the drashos and the psukim. I tried to make it as clear as possible. So I think every child knows that the mommies had 6 babies at a time in Mitzrayim. That's something they're taught even from a young age, the Medrash. So in the Haggadah, I divided the 6 words up so that the person reading along and following along can see where Chazal saw that, right? Gada Atzim Kamosh Amar, Uvnei Yisrael, 1 Paru, 2 V'Yishutsu, 3 V'Yirbu, V'Yasum Rod Ma'od, 4, 5, 6. And so you see now, that's a good place now in the Haggadah to talk about the miracle of the Jewish women and their birth, and to open up a discussion about what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for them, and 6 babies at a time. So therefore, within the text of the Haggadah, there's an opportunity to explain the Medrash. Vayhi b'yamim harabim hain v'yamas melech Mitzrayim. Right? It says that the king of Mitzrayim died. What do Chazal tell us? It means that he got saras. He is like death, and tried to cure the saras. He had this terrible, terrible atrocity of Jewish children were slaughtered, and their blood was used to bathe him. Now, you obviously have to know, you got to know who's at the table and which child will be able to handle that. I think many people are familiar with Rabbi Chaitz and Gadi Palak's, beautiful, Haggadah that has beautiful pictures about midrashim. Okay, for a young child, some of those images can be very startling, and they can be very hard to look at. So, but again, that's an opportunity when you talk about Yamas Melech Mitzrayim. Chazal are there to teach you what do you need to know about what happened. What can we learn from the pain and the suffering that the Jewish people were going through? Those are just, I think, some clear examples.
So what about sources that you use? You've mentioned various things, especially things that helped you work on the translation. But what about the actual sources for either things that you're using when you're elucidating in the translation, as well as the Torah that you're bringing? You mentioned a lot of Medrash and Chazal. So is that the bulk of it? And what about others for other Makaris?
If it's a Dvar Torah on the Haggadah that I think is meant to bring out Amunah and Hashkafa related to the point, I'll tell you exactly where it's from. Again, there's not so many of them, but I'll tell you exactly where it's from, source, page, cited exactly. If it's a Medrash that's elaborating on the text of the Haggadah itself, then you can assume that I pulled it from Natamei HaShulchan from Rabbi Moshe Lewis, or from Let My People Go from Rabbi Deutsch. And, Ayin Sham, a person can look there, to see more about which Medrash and which books they pulled it from. And for the elucidation of the text itself, when I didn't bring so many Midrashim, again, that was, either from Mesifta Oz V'Hadar or from the Torah Chaim from Masada of Cook with the Rishonim. And as well, I would recommend as well, if somebody wants to go check it out, Reuven Leichter has definitely a specific mahalach. He also uses the text of the Haggadah very, very cleanly to bring out this idea. But Reuven Leichter also has a very, very beautiful way to open up the text and to use the text itself to teach Amunah and Hashkafa. I think the main thing he talks about is that Mitzrayim shows the Jewish people that Hashem is interested in them. That was the big chiddush. That was the big event of the night, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is interested in the Jewish people, and I tried to call from there as well.
So, I guess a couple of final questions over here. Who is this Seder really? Who is the Seder? Who is the Haggadah really for? You mentioned a couple of times how it's for someone leading a Seder to teach them, to help them how to lead a Seder. Is that who it's specifically for? Is it for others at a Seder?
Mm-hmm. I think, again, obviously I would like as many people as possible to hopefully learn from it. I think it is for the following. Obviously, it's not for, so much for native Hebrew speakers. It's not for them. I think it's for a balabas. I think it's for a parent who needs help learning how to, to tell the story, who might not have the time to sit for 6, 7, 8 hours to cull through 50 Haggadahs to pull things together. I think what you have here is a really nice basis. And this is what I said before as well. I specifically asked from Mosaic, who really I think they did a really lovely job here. I asked for wide margins, because I want that the person in the Haggadah should say, I heard a beautiful idea. I saw a beautiful clip on WhatsApp. Somebody sent me a beautiful idea. Let me go write it down in the margin of the Haggadah, so I'll have it for next year. I'll have it to be able to share, because I want this Haggadah to be something that people go back to again and again. That by all means, buy new Haggadahs and, build up your Svarim collection and, buy new things every year. But the hope is that you go back to this text to lead the Seder, and you cull and you cultivate from other places. I also do think that even the Talmud Chacham, the person who's Yudei Svarim, who knows and can open up Haggadahs on their own and to put things together, even a big Talmud Chacham who knows a lot and knows how to learn and has a lot of ideas, he also sometimes needs guidance on how to present, how to clarify what to say, what not to say. A person can have a lot of Torah in their head, but you also have to know how to present it. And I think that the script here that's laid out in Haggadah can be helpful for someone who needs a push, who needs guidance, who needs structure in how to present the information, even if they have a lot of stuff in their head, and how to make it fit for the people at the Seder. There's a beautiful vart from Chaskell Abramsky, that's I think brought in his biography. He says that the chatzotros that were used to call Bnei Yisrael together to go to battle or to call them for meetings, so the halacha is they can't be reused in every generation. All the other kelim, the menorah and the aron and everything else is passed down from generation to generation. But the chatzotros, the things that are used to call and to communicate to Klal Yisrael, have to be changed in every generation. So Chaskell Abramsky says is because the Torah always stays the same. The menorah is the same, and the aron with the luchos stays the same. That doesn't change. But the mechanism in which you communicate the Torah has to relate to that generation. Every generation needs new chatzotros. It needs new methods of communication to relate the Torah to them in a way that's going to fit them and guide them. And hopefully this structure, this Haggadah, can be used as a method to communicate those ideas. And then, even if you're not leading a Seder, I think the participant who wants to understand everything that's going on, why are we doing this? Why are we lifting this? Why are we covering this? Why are we saying this? Why are we having a maror? Why are we doing karpas? What's the point of leading? All these things, I think we lay out pretty clearly in the Haggadah. That makes it very accessible for the English reader.
So, in closing, what would your advice be to someone leading a Seder? Just again, with all your, caveat about you're not being said before. But
Yeah.
what would your advice be? Especially you wrote this Haggadah, you had ideas that the school should teach the parents, but if they're not, and people don't have time, people are busy, people are working, they don't have time to sit and really sit and prepare so much. So how should they be prepared to be Makayim the mitzvah of Begadat Mincha?
Okay. Again, I'm 100% in favor of a little shtick, as long as it's helpful in telling the story, not shtick that's going to be distracting. If a person needs to dress up like Paro, if a person, whatever you're going to do, it's fine. I think there's a very talented Rebbe in one of the high schools here. His name is Rabbi Yechiel Weberman. He has a website called awesomepesach.com, where he has very, very creative ideas and products that a person can use. But again, those surround the story itself. You still need to focus on the text, of the Haggadah. I remember for a couple of years I used to do this. Depends how much time we have. When we get to the section by the Haggadah of the building and the collapse of Pison and Ramses, how the Jewish people would build and then the structure would fall. So before Pesach, I would secretly, take some of my kids like building blocks and toys, and I would build like a small city, a small tower, and I would hide it away, and then we would bring it out by Pison and Ramses, and we would knock it down to show them what it means like to have a building built and to put something effort into something and to work on something and to see all of your work collapse and to be dangerous, to do things that relate to the story that speak to the children. If the person has a bit of creativity inside of them, I would say this is the night, for that creativity to come out and that creativity to really come forward, to become a storyteller, to go out of your comfort zone a little bit, to push yourself, a little bit of excitement, reading collective Torah that will work for your family and your kids. I think it's also important as well, just to not forget that you also have to be relaxed. You can have a grand plan and a beautiful script of how you want Pesach night to go, but Hashem might have other plans, and your 5-year-old might have other plans as well. And you have to be open to change and to things adapting, and things don't go according to plan. They're going to fight over seats, and they're going to fight over who has a more comfortable pillow. And you could plan beautifully, and it doesn't always work out. I guess I'll say one, embarrassing story about myself about how you can plan, it doesn't work out. One year I put in all the preparation, everything, plans, whatever, and then we have timers on our house that the lights go out at the same time every single night, and if somebody's up, they turn them on, but just so we don't forget for Shabbos. So the timers are the same time. And I forgot, after my wife's request, I forgot to change the timers for Pesach night. So what should have been a much longer night, because it was Pesach night, the lights went out for Shabbos and Yontif at the regular time. So I had to very quickly adapt, and I had to kind of rush to the Seder, because within a few minutes we were not going to be able to see anything anymore because the lights were going to go out. So yeah, it happens. You could have all the grand plans and all the excitement in the world. You have to be relaxed. The person has to be besimcha. You have to be open to change and to challenge and to go with the flow a little bit. And hopefully, with enough siyata d'shmaya, that everything will come out beautifully, and hopefully be something that's memorable, meaningful for your children, that your children look back and say, the Pesach was an important time, something important was going on. Even I don't remember every single Dvar Torah, every single Medrash, but I remember that Pesach night was an important thing where we discussed important topics.
All right. So I will link to your Haggadah for those interested in checking it out and interested in purchasing it. And hopefully, this was useful, helpful conversation regardless. And, if people will get a Haggadah that works for them to accomplish these goals for the Seder this year. So thank you, Rabbi Rice, for joining me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, really.